Okay, so we have our solution. It's saturated, and you read through the definition of saturated solution, and I'll just remind us. A solution is saturated when the solvent cannot dissolve any more solute. So on the 4th spoon of salt, it was saturated. It wouldn't dissolve anymore. Now, I could have put a little bit more, a little bit less salt, and there could be a little bit too much in there, so now we need to really know how many grams of salt it took for it to then be saturated. It couldn't handle anymore. So if we remember, unfortunately, I didn't bring home any filters. Oops, so I'm going to use this coffee filter. Same thing. It's going to do what? Remember, it's going to take the extra salt in there, and it should stay up top when I wet this, and then we'll have only the salt solution that it took to be saturated in a cup, and then we're going to find out how many gram pieces we can put to see the mass of the salt solution at a saturated level. Okay, so I wet this. This is going to work a little funky because we don't have our funnel, we have nothing, but that's okay. We're going to improvise. So my salt solution, it's saturated, but there's too much salt in it. It took less salt than I put of the 4 scoops to be able to saturate it. So I'm going to use this. Okay. So we see the extra salt. There's a little bit of extra, so obviously that didn't dissolve. Okay. It's working a little less than it does at school, so I'm just gonna play with it here. Okay, almost, and I'll show you some of our extra salts coming out. But let me show you what's in here. Can you see all that extra salt, okay? We don't want that. That was unable to dissolve, which means it was already saturated. The solvent could not handle any more solute. So let's figure out how much mass this is. Or figuring out how much salt we put in there by how much mass the salt was. Let's think back. We had 50 milliliters of water. Every 50 milliliters of water is how many grams, right? For every 1 milliliter of water, it's 1 gram. So 50 milliliters is. Then we're going to figure out how much this salt solution is in total, the mass. Then if we remember we do the math, we subtract the salt solution, and we take away the 50 milliliters of water, the 50 grams, and we find out the mass of just the salt. How much salt it took to saturate our solution. So, I do know it's about 50, so I'm going to start with actually I have my 20 gram piece in here. So, 20 grams. Okay, this is still heavier. Another 10, still heavier. 30. Put my 5 pieces in. 35, 40, 45. Oh, starting to move a little bit. 50. Okay, that still weighs more, which makes sense because the 50 milliliters of water is 50 grams, but we added salt, so the mass increases. So I'm going to go one at a time. 51, 52, 'kay. Go ahead and put one more. Okay, so 53 grams. So some of the water might have gotten stuck, so it doesn't work perfectly. That's why all of our groups normally do it. But if we had our 50 milliliters of water, then we added salt it would increase. And now this salt solution is 53 grams. So how much salt did it take to saturate it? Okay, so now you're going to go through the rest of the questions and answer the questions. Think about the volume too when we go through this. Do we think the volume might have increased? You can always make a prediction on that because remember, we added more salt, so do we think the volume might have increased? Okay, so finished going through the questions. I have a challenge for you though. When you're finished with this and you turn it in, why don't you go ahead and try to saturate some water? If you have a water bottle or any container that closes, put some water in it. See if you can scoop some salt and see how much salt it takes. How many spoonfuls of salt it takes to saturate your container of solution. Okay? Bye, friends.